And all right. And we're on. Dr. Nick, how are you? Thank you very much for being with us. Can you please tell everybody that doesn't know you what you do and how we met? Like, what is your social media about? Just who's Dr. Nick?
Awesome. Well, first of all, Layla, thank you for inviting me on. We met through, what a lot of people use, the medium a lot of people use to meet these days, social media, Instagram specifically. Um, uh, so my name is Dr. Nick. I went to medical school at Ohio State University, graduated many years back, have been practicing medicine since. I currently practice urgent care medicine locally as I see fit, and then I practice more holistically with a group called Steady MD, which offers primary care medicine services to pretty much any person in the country. I'm currently licensed in 35 different states. I see patients in 35 different states online on a long-standing, on a comprehensive basis, because as I mentioned earlier, I'm very holistic in my mindset. I don't like quick fixes. I think that there's a lot of utility in putting in the work in whatever aspect of life. So that's how I like to doctor as well, and practice medicine and try to minimize use of medications and pills, and kind of change people's lives for the better. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. And you missed the best part, man. You work out. You work out super
Sure.
good. Like you got your lifts on point. You're doing your metcons. You're doing CrossFit as the way of the style that you do your metabolic conditioning and your resistance
Yep.
training and all that.
Yep.
All of that. Like, how long have you been doing that for?
So I started in med school. So I can't remember the exact time that I started CrossFit, but I know with certainty that I've been doing it now for 10 to 11 years. I started it in med school. I've told this story before, but how I got into it, Laylo, is because I love martial arts, right? Fighting in all forms, right? So I have a black belt to Taekwondo, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, and in med school, when I was studying, I needed something to decompress mentally and physically, and just kind of get away from these 18-hour days of study, 16 to 18-hour days of studying. So what I chose to do was Krav Maga. I had heard a lot about it, and I was super interested. So I started at this local gym called Ohio Krav Maga and Fitness, since I was a medical student at Ohio State College of Medicine. And I loved Krav. I mean, it was like the best hour of my day. The rest of my day was just drudgery, like, reading books and trying to soak in all this information. And the place that I was at, as I mentioned, Ohio Krav Maga and Fitness. So that and fitness portion, lo and behold, I come to class every day. Half of the gym is doing Krav like me. The other half is doing this weird thing that I'm like, what the hell is that? At the end of the class, everybody at the end of this CrossFit class is on the ground staring at the gym, hating their lives. And I was like, okay, they look like, they just do not enjoy what they're doing. So it's really funny when a couple of the guys, a couple of the months into Krav, these guys are just kind of introducing themselves to me, and they're trying to basically make me migrate from Krav to CrossFit. Hey, Nick, you look like you'd be great at this. You should come give this a shot. And I was like, hell no. Like, you guys, you clearly hate your lives. Why would I want to do that?
It's the cult, man. They were trying to get you over.
Yeah. They're trying to recruit me. So, hey, I'm not gonna lie. They were persistent, and I gave it a shot one time, because in my head, I was thinking, I was like, hey, listen, I have training in multiple martial arts, and as well as I do, right? Regardless of martial art, whether we're talking, regardless of whatever martial art, whether we are talking judo, jiu-jitsu, Krav, Muay Thai, sparring another individual, right, is one of the most exhausting things that you can do. So because of that, Laylo, I'm sure as well as I do, you have a certain amount of confidence going into CrossFit. You're like, I already spar, I should be able to do this CrossFit thing. Nope, CrossFit still put me on my back and kick my butt. But at this point, my issue was, okay, now I love CrossFit and how it made me feel, and just being exhausted at the end of the workout. But I also love Krav, and there's no way I could dedicate 2 hours to my day for fitness when I'm a med student, and I should have my head in the book. So I had to pick one. And the one that I picked obviously was CrossFit, because I just felt like it could keep
CrossFit
me.
wins.
I know. I felt like CrossFit could keep me holistically fit over the
Right.
course of my med school, and the years, and then hopefully in the future I'd be able to get back into Krav or Jiu-Jitsu or Judo or whatever. So I'm at the point in my life where I now have a little bit more time, and I can absolutely tell you, it's funny, I actually have a patient on SteadyMD who I saw recently who practices Jiu-Jitsu, and he tried to get me. He was like, "Don't do Krav. Come," because I come to jiu-jitsu, and I was like, I don't know, man. Krav has a special place in my heart, but I'm going to restart it here, and I'm either going to start doing Krav or jiu-jitsu. But yeah, I've been doing CrossFit now for over 10 years, and zero, as opposed to the common thinking behind CrossFit, 10 or 11 years of doing it, zero injuries, right? I think it's very important. Your mindset can lead one to injuries, right? For example, I think a lot of people come into CrossFit and they want to compete with the person to their left or their right, instead of keeping in mind what they're capable of doing, and then trying to compete with the person to the left or the right. Obviously, they open themselves up to injury. So I'm very proud that I've been doing it now for so many years with no injuries. I've slowly but surely gotten stronger in everything. I remember when snatching 115 pounds was so difficult, and now I'm at 285 pounds. So it's one of these things.
That's really cool, because that's one of those things that it motivates you, it drives you, but you understand, and you understood from the beginning, tissue tolerance versus tissue demand are two very different things. And the way that you can rest, the way that you can take your body will put you in a place to win every time. A lot of that comes with also I know that the CrossFit you go to, the way that you prescribe, the way that they prescribe the workouts, they write the programming, is a great way. It's a way that you would, as a doctor, see it and be like, no, that doesn't make any sense. That would just destroy the tissues that I've been working on. And if you can trust the coach, I know that that's part of the whole idea of, okay, I know what I need to do, but I'm also going to allow somebody to program for me, and I'm going to trust that programming and then take it little by little, instead of saying, whatever's on the board, I'm going to win, which is not
Absolutely.
the idea of the whole thing. And the majority of the CrossFit community kind of lives by the same idea. Like, no, we do things logically. The thing is that the bad rep comes from, hey, where's the drama? He hurt his shoulder. Oh, CrossFit's terrible because he hurt his shoulder, or he hurt his knee. Oh, CrossFit's terrible because he hurt his knee. There could be a problem already in the person biomechanically. There could be so many other things. It could be a programming problem with the coach. We don't know, but you can't just blame it on that, because in personal training and in anything, in jiu-jitsu, in getting out of your car, in going to the grocery store, I had a lady that she broke her foot getting out of her car. So yeah, it's like somebody would see and be like, oh yeah, you train very hard, you probably should slow down, that's why you broke your foot. It's like, no, she got out of the car, slipped on grass, broke her foot. Like,
Right.
How do you do that? But I get it. I really like your mentality throughout, because you're not competitive against anybody else. You're just doing the best thing for you, and you enjoy it. So I'm going to go through a couple of these questions that I had for you. And I know that you have so much more that you want to talk about in the lessons that you've learned through the gym, because I think it's important to also know there was a point in time where Dr. Nick was not Dr. Nick. He was starting, it was pre-med school, pre-Ohio State, pre-college. Like, it was the beginning of when you first touched the barbell or some weights, and you were like, okay, I felt lactate, I felt a lot of hydrogen, this hurts, but I'm gonna do it again. Do you remember kind of where that was for you?
Yeah, so growing up, if we want to go kind of before med school and before CrossFit, so growing up, Lalo, I was a nerd, right? I was the kid playing like video games at 2 a.m., specifically this computer game called Tribes, if anybody knows Tribes 1 and Tribes 2, playing that up to like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., right? And the reason why I bring that up is because it was really difficult for my dad to peel me away from video games, right? My dad would be like, come on, we got to go to the gym. We got to go to the YMCA, right? I'm like 15, 16. I'm like, I don't care about that. Like, my athletic endeavors before that was soccer, and only soccer. So I didn't care about going to the gym. I didn't care about putting on mass and getting stronger, but dads are dads, right? And they're going to be persistent. And so he was. So long story short, I ended up going to the gym, my programming back then, Layla, was men's health magazines, right? I'd literally read through men's health magazines, and anything that they said, oh, try this workout, try this, I'd be in the gym, trying whatever men's health said. And I remember one day, I was watching TV and the Olympics were on, right? And I remember I saw this little 5'2", 5'3", probably even shorter, Chinese woman, like snatching like 200 pounds, over 200 pounds, right? And I was immediately fascinated. I was like, I literally in my mind, I was like, from a physics standpoint, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I was like, she's too small. How is she generating that much force? There's no way, even me and my size, I'm 6'3". This is high school, right? So I'm probably like, I don't know, probably 170 pounds, 175 pounds. But still, even at my size and my height, I was like, there's no way that I can move that barbell like she does and as heavy
Right.
as she is. So I'm like, what the hell am I missing? I'm over here listening to men's health, right? And men's health in that time, and I'm sure even today to some extent, is emphasizing structural, mono joint movements, right?
Yeah.
And not necessarily compound movements. So I'm over here doing bicep curls and doing lat pull downs and all this stuff at the YMCA. I'm like, literally snap of a finger after watching this video of this girl, I realize I'm wasting my time in the gym, right? If some little girl can generate so much more power than me, I'm not doing the correct training. So long story short, I started training by myself at the YMCA simply based off of YouTube videos and watching YouTube videos. I started training the Olympic lifts. I have not I still have a video on my computer and I have not posted it on my Instagram, and I'm gonna post it on my Instagram, but I have a video of me. First of all, the most atrocious technique you've ever seen of a clean and jerk at like not even 95 pounds, like probably like 75 pounds, but just disgusting technique. And I have this video from over 10 years ago. So I'm going to post it on my Instagram soon, because I think all too often, so this is kind of one of the life lessons that kind of is the subject of this podcast. But I think all too often in life, we look at people who are on another level as compared to us, who seem to be so much higher and so much more capable than us, and we think to ourselves, they have it easy, right? Or they develop that because they're genetically gifted or they're genetically blessed, blah blah blah, right? So I think the reason why I want to post this video on my Instagram is because, sure, somebody can see me right now clean and jerking 325 pounds or 330 and be like, oh, that dude's a genetic freak, he doesn't have to work for what he has, when that's bullshit. That's complete BS, right? Because I literally have videos of me starting out and just horrible movement, horrible mechanics. So listen, we all have to start somewhere, right? The journey of 1,000 steps the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, right? So I think that's the mindset that's more crucial. So that's kind of me starting out, and ultimately, even though I was practicing clean and jerks for myself, and it's funny, back then I was not practicing snatching for myself because I looked at that movement and to be honest, Layla, I was terrified. I was like, what happens if the weight falls down? Like it's just like that, the snatches is the most explosive movement in all of CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting, right? So in my head, there was just too many downsides to trying to teach myself to snatch, so I didn't do it. I only tried to clean and jerk. But essentially, I continued trying to teach myself, and then got into med school, and then stopped training as much, and then got into Krav, and then obviously the story I just told you. So yeah,
that's crazy. You know who posted a video like that? Elijah Muhammad. He posted a video of him cleaning. I think it was in high school, and it was just the worst form ever. Or when he started CrossFit, and then he posted a video in one of the CrossFit games, and it was just so amazing to see that, because it takes work, it takes time, it takes your own understanding, behavior. It just takes a lot of different things put together into this Rubik's cube of like, little by little, we'll get there. And that leads me to my next question, which is, do you remember what was your first or one of your biggest financial investments in order to get you better as an athlete? Like, do you remember signing up to your first CrossFit? How much you have to pay? Or
okay, great. Yeah, that's a really good yes. So yeah, I think the So CrossFit notoriously across the country is expensive by normal people's standards, right? So the first gym that I joined, right, like I said, the Ohio Krav Maga and Fitness, I was paying, I believe because I was a student, I got the discount. I was paying like 105. But a normal rate for CrossFit is around $200. The rate that I pay right now, sorry, excuse me, is $165 a month. So I think that is one of the uh, biggest investments I have made from a health standpoint, right? Truly from a health standpoint, because obviously do the math. If you're paying that much for the gym, you're easily paying over $1,000 per year.
Yeah. So let's say 165 times 12 months, and then we multiply that times 11 years that you've been doing CrossFit. That's 21 grand, $21,780.
Right.
That's an amazing investment. That's what your body is worth more, than that. But of course, part of it.
And I think what's even more important there, right? Even though sure, it's over 20 grand over the last 10 years, what's more important is how many morbidities has that prevented in me, in terms of, you have to keep in mind, right? A lot of people unfortunately are not aware of, in this country, just go outside and take a walk, right? Over 60% of the people you see have metabolic syndrome and have some degree of insulin resistance. A smaller percentage of people have type 2 diabetes. Outside of type 2 diabetes, there are a myriad of different essentially what we call diseases of lifestyle, right? Where because of your daily choices, whether it's the gym, whether it's food, whether it's sleep, whether it's stress or lack thereof of stress management,
right,
because of your daily choices, there are people who get afflicted with these diseases and then what do they need to do with diseases? You need to manage them, right?
right.
If somebody thinks that 20,000 over 10 years is expensive, then that person needs to go talk to a type 2 diabetic who's on insulin and find out how much they're paying and how much they will pay projected over 10 years. They will pay much more. So essentially, in my mind, doing everything you can from a lifestyle standpoint, and like I said, this isn't just the gym, this is also outside of the gym, but doing everything you can to prevent the onset of disease, especially when you are aware of your family history, right? So many of the patients I see have a family history of hypertension, hyperlipidemia, other issues. And there's nothing like being aware of your family history, because that gives you a little preview of what is on deck for you if you don't watch the things that you should be watching. And bottom line, like I'm implying, in as much as 20,000 over these many years is expensive, people need to understand that that is expensive only when you're not considering how many things, how many medical diagnoses it is protecting you from, how many things that you don't have. Now me at my current age, I don't have any medical diagnoses outside of sleep apnea, which no amount of I essentially have the reason why I have sleep apnea is I have a poor Malapati score. So the inside of my airway, simply because of anatomically how I was born, it's not a lot of space.
Right.
So when I sleep, a lot of people who have sleep apnea unfortunately develop it secondary to their body habitus. So because they have increased size, increased BMI, where BMI specifically in this regards is pertaining only to people who have a large amount of adiposity, so they have a large amount of fat. The reason why I specify that is because I'm not a fan of applying BMI to everybody. For example, myself right now, I'm at 12% body fat, 13% body fat, 6'3", and at 225 pounds, my BMI is 28, designating me as overweight, right? So BMI doesn't necessarily apply to everybody, especially if you have a lot of muscle mass that can be objectively proven by computer vision standards, by DEXA. But circling back here, I guess what I'm saying is that there are a large contingent of diseases that are secondary to lifestyle choices. And if you can partake in something like investing in the gym, and investing in kind of the secondary things, because you have to keep in mind when you go to the gym, people like to act like, oh, that's really the only change that you'll make, but it isn't. Like, you know as well as I do, it isn't just
Yeah.
about going to the gym. You then, the gym becomes a feedback mechanism for you, right?
Yeah.
So you go to the gym, you look at your scores, and I mean, if you're hopefully being focused, you look at your scores and you start to realize over a large enough period of time that you can improve your scores objectively, simply making better choices, by eating better, by managing your stress better, by choosing to prioritize sleep, by not
Right.
drinking as much alcohol, right, which a lot of people in this country do.
Man, I
And
post it
the
every weekend. I tell people,
Yeah,
stop drinking all the time on the weekends if you want the results. It doesn't work that
absolutely.
way.
Absolutely. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And the thing is, Laylo, speaking, let's go down that route, right? People, unfortunately, believe they can drink alcohol, a whole bunch of alcohol and beer and whatnot, and it doesn't affect them. There is there's a very solid relationship between alcohol intake and testosterone, and all too often, I see patients on SteadyMD, and I check their testosterone, and they are not, for a 30-something-year-old man, your testosterone should not be in the 300s or 400s. It should be much higher, right? It's funny. I actually just saw a patient yesterday who um, has we diagnosed him with, I mean, incredibly low testosterone, and I believe his was 130. So you keep in mind here, most testosterones across the country have normal ranges of between 250 and approximately 900, 950. So essentially, at this point, I am now doing some subsequent blood work, trying to figure out, does this person have primary hypogonadism? So that's what it's called when your testicles are at fault for not producing enough testosterone, or do they have secondary hypogonadism? So that's when either your pituitary or your or your hypothalamus is not sending out the signals necessary for you to produce enough testosterone. But long and short of it, is that this gentleman, before I tested him, first of all, Laylo, here's what's amazing. This is why I test testosterone on every single patient, on every single male patient who I come across for a new appointment, because many people don't understand that the symptoms that they're having, that they have normalized in their mind, that in their minds they've completely said this is normal. Those
Yeah.
symptoms are not normal; they're abnormal, and because of that, it's a very good thing that I'm checking testosterone at a baseline, by default on these people, because this individual, like I said, he came back hypogonadal at a very low testosterone, and I asked him afterward, when I shared my results with him, I asked him, okay, tell me about. I started specifically asking him about symptoms, right? Are you having mood swings? Are you having a depressed mood consistently? Are you having decreased body hair, whether on your legs or on your arms compared to other men? Are you having hot flashes? Now, a lot of men don't know this. You can have, when you have low testosterone consistently for a long enough time, you're going to have hot
Wow.
flashes, right? Do you have decreased mood, decreased vigor, decreased libido? This gentleman, my patient, told me that he actually endorsed. He said yes, that he was having an issue across the board with all of these. And then he told me another story. He told me that 2 weeks ago he was talking with his wife in the evening, and he just started crying. He literally just started breaking down. He just became super emotional and started crying. And in his mind, my patient, as he's telling me this, he doesn't understand why all this is happening. In my mind, I'm like, this all makes sense. This literally all fits with low testosterone. And I told him, I was like, I really wish you would have told me this, because, I wouldn't necessarily have changed my management. I would have ordered a testosterone on you regardless. But,
Yeah.
at least now we know what's going on so that we can address it. But anyway, the reason why I went down the road of testosterone is just to say frequent alcohol intake by men is known to reduce your testosterone. You can't, and
Right.
guys can try to ignore this all they want, and then be surprised or fail to understand why some other men are more fertile, or not fertile, are more virile, right? Or why they
Yeah.
have more vigor, or why their sex drive is higher, or
Right.
don't understand why they're having issues with their wife. And you know,
It just breaks down.
absolutely.
I mean,
I think it's best to look at things like this holistically, and people need to realize that the choices they make day to day have a fundamental impact on their life in the long term. So
essentially that's a failure on your part as a human being. It also affects women a lot when they go into such a caloric deficit, that I see women
yes,
not eating enough because they're going to get fat, and and they're not
yes.
going to grow the glutes that they see on Instagram. But that's
Hmm.
that's what I see a lot of, right? And we try to guide them from the front lines. Like, we're the front line, the coaches and the trainers, and then we go little by little. But have you ever seen yourself, has Dr. Nick ever gone through a training, an athlete failure in any way? Have you ever like thought about like how I failed that part ever? Or have you just gone like, you've just seen one
Yeah.
way how it works and you did that correctly?
No, no. I mean, I think as an athlete, right? Not considering med school, or the medicine side of things. I have considered. So I've always like compete. I've done at this point, Lelos, over the last 10 or 11 years, I've done like 15 CrossFit competitions, right? Um, I think it's always been a failure that I don't do as well as I want in these competitions. And you have to keep in mind, like most doctors, I have a very perfectionist bias mindset. So what I mean is, by what I mean by I'm not doing as well as I want is I'm not getting first, second, or third. I'm not hitting podium in these competitions, right? And I think, despite the fact that I do consider that a failure, I'm very good about seeing things in context, right? And what I mean by that is, in as much as these things have been a failure, I'm completely cognizant of the fact that I'm trying to do these CrossFit competitions when I'm in med school, when I'm in residency, when every other athlete who's at the comps are either owners of gyms, or they are athletes who essentially have the type of job that allows them to spend 2 to 3 hours training in the gym every single day. While me, I'm coming in, hitting an hour workout, and going home and studying, and sometimes not prioritizing my sleep because I have to study. And so I think, like I said, right, I'm able to view these things in context. So even though I'm disappointed in myself, and I absolutely know from an athletic standpoint that I'm failing because I'm not getting first, second, or third place at these competitions, I was able to look at things and realize. And to be honest, I've had really good friends who have managed to put things into perspective for me, and tell me, like, dude, are you serious? You're studying to become a doctor. Like, you're busting your butt learning every day. You can't expect yourself to you can't expect yourself to have the time to train as much as you want, and to do as well as you'd like in these competitions. So I've been really grateful to have those people at my side, and kind of talking in my ear, and helping me realize that um, there's nothing wrong with this perfectionist mindset that I applied to the
Right.
gym, but there is something wrong with not realizing that it should be delayed, which is why, to be honest, now that I'm not in med school anymore, now that I'm not in residency anymore, I'm like, I absolutely want to compete, and I'm signing up for CrossFit competitions, Olympic weightlifting competitions, powerlifting competitions. Wanting to get back into Krav Maga, just compete in as many regards as I can, just because I enjoy it, and now I have expectations that I will be disappointed if they don't
Do you
they don't come in.
do you think that, because the reason why I asked that question is because people always have an excuse on their failure, like the guy that drinks or the girl that doesn't eat. They always have a thing of like, oh, I'm sorry, it was just the weekend. And and I try to ask people, because yeah, sometimes we fail, but there are certain people that, it's not that they fail, it's just that they allow themselves to be within a range. You allow yourself to be within a range of eating, for example, where somebody might be like, how do you eat that? That's bad for you. And you're like, well, I know what's bad for me overall. This
Mm.
meal right here might not be bad for me. If I did this as much as other people, yeah, it's going to be very bad for me. Do you stay within a, not not essentially a perfect, but do you stay within a means where you're comfortable eating certain things that people would see as bad? Or do you ever have a drink or anything like that? Or is it just that's your lifestyle where you don't have those things and you're just in there?
No, no, no. I would say it's the former rather than the latter, right? What I mean by that is I think that it's very important. So one of the things that I help my patients on SETI and B, as you know, in addition to whether it's treating their thyroid or treating their blood pressure or treating their diabetes, I also help my patients who are motivated to lose weight. I'm essentially their weight loss coach, and I provide them accountability and um, help them move down the path. And one of the things that I always say to my patients is there's no such thing as a bad food. And why I say that, even though sure you could point at cake or you could point at Oreos and say that's a bad food, I would instead argue that that food simply lies along a spectrum, right? And that sure we could talk about absolutely great foods at this end of the spectrum and worse foods over here, but I think that there's no such thing as an objective good or bad because you have to consider that food within the context of everything else that you eat. So
Right.
there's a well-known principle, the Pareto principle, 80-20. I'm definitely a big fan of that, in that you can't be perfect 100% of the time, right? So my weakness when it comes to food is candy, gummy bears, gummy worms, and whatnot. And for the most part, I completely avoid them. But there are some times, Layla, where I'm going to have a craving, right? And I think
Yeah.
that, especially when you are doing things right 80% of the time, 90% of the time, and some people, you should not feel guilty when you are addressing that craving 20% of the time or 10% of the time, right? Because, like I said earlier, sure, that food along the spectrum may not be perfect, but in the context of your other meals, in the context of your other choices, it is a good choice because it gives you a little bit of a release from a willpower standpoint, and you can give in and still stick on track. And I think that ultimately, I know for a fact that this approach works because, like I said, I've helped a number of people, a number of my patients lose. The biggest loser, so to speak, of my patients was, and she's still working with me, is a 63. She was 63 when she started working with me. She's now a 64-year-old woman who started with me at 416 pounds. And as of last Sunday, when she checked in with me, she's 289 pounds.
Wow.
So, and she started, I can actually tell you the exact day she started. She started with me March 30th of 2020. So within the year here, she's lost over 100 pounds. And I've helped her. Don't get me wrong, like it's not easy. This mindset that I just shared with you and knowing when it applies best is not super easy to just know immediately. But she
Right.
has me as her doctor, so she reaches
Right.
out whenever she wants, and we talk about things, because I think essentially when you're helping someone in this regard, you need to give them a formula that works. My biggest issue with diets, Lalo, is this. Some diets will work for people during the time that they're dieting, and then what happens? Then they go back to their old way of eating.
Right.
Slowly but surely, the pounds come on, right? So I think
Right.
that it's very crucial to develop a mindset that not only works for you during the time that you're dieting, but that also works for you after the time that you're done dieting, so that you keep the weight off and you approach things in the same way, right? You don't ever restrict yourself and tell yourself 100% I can't have this. That's not going to be sustainable over the long term. And whenever
Right.
anything isn't sustainable over the long term, it doesn't, at least in
Right.
my opinion, it doesn't make any sense to even start it in the first place.
And that takes me directly into a life lesson that I learned in that, because um it doesn't, like, if I work around people that are negative, for example, it's not that, oh, I can't be around these people. No, I have to be around these people. So I'm forced to go back to, it's not that I can't have this, is that I have to learn how to deal with this. And in an essence, having to deal with a craving, having to deal with the habits that you've had before, if you keep the bad habits on forever, they'll catch up to you. But if I'm able to handle them and work my way around them and know how to control myself better around those things, it becomes a more of a thing that I can use in different aspects of life. And when you talked about polymorphism, to be able to assimilate, was it polymorphism where you with Ryan Fisher, where you talked about some people assimilate, like you can eat a pizza and I can eat a pizza, but your insulin is going to spike different than mine because our body
Yes,
behavior is different. When you
absolutely.
talked about that, it directly correlated to the fact that maybe the way that I react towards some people around me is different than the way that you would react to some people around me, or the way that I would take on a failure of a big snatch is different than the way that you would react to. I remember one time I invited a black belt jujitsu friend of mine to a training session, and some kid snatched. He failed to snatch, and then he threw his water bottle, hitting the black belt jiu-jitsu guy. And it wasn't a pretty sight. It was just like, yeah, throw it anywhere, but not at that guy right there.
Right, right,
And
right,
it's
right.
just the way he reacted towards his failure was the wrong way. And when you talked about that, it just puts everything into perspective, that our behaviors and our things that we're doing to change overall, not just in nutrition and in training, it can transfer to so many other things in our life. I'm sure the
Absolutely.
lady that lost so much weight has also changed things in her personal life that
Hmm.
have been amazing, right?
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
No, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I think that, ultimately, um, okay, so let's address this from a couple different aspects. Number one, I agree with you, but I think that we're not. I unlike a lot of people who believe that our personalities and our mindsets are concrete and are set in stone, I don't believe that.
Right.
Research has shown that neuronal changes, so changes in the brain, from a neuroplasticity standpoint, happen in individuals well into old age, well into their 80s and 90s, right? So the quote that I hate the most is, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks." That's BS. Yes, you can.
I
But
was
first
just
of
thinking
all,
of that. Yes.
right. But first of all, you need to get out of the mindset that you're not able to change. Human beings, by our nature, are fluid. The reason why we are the dominant species on this planet is because we have managed to conquer so many different things from so many different angles, in terms of human beings being able to specialize, right? So I may be a doctor, but if my toilet breaks down, I don't care how smart I am, right? I may not be able to fix that. So what do? I reach out to somebody who is specialized in that area, a plumber who's much more intelligent in that area than I am, right? And I think that that's something that's important to realize, that, like I said, the reason why we are the dominant species on this planet is because we are able to our brains are obviously in our infancy and being teenagers and whatnot. Hopefully we're going to school and we're trying to learn and we're trying to be open-minded, because essentially what we're doing during that time is we're specialized, and we're creating certain skills, which you can create at any point in time in your life, but we're definitely biasing ourselves, towards certain things based on our skills. So I do think that, in as much as some people take failure poorly, like the gentleman who threw that water bottle when he failed a snatch, that's something you can change. You need to realize, right? To be honest, with that specific example, that's interesting to me, because I've always wondered, like, Layla, you should see me when I fail a lift at the gym. Like, I don't like I've always been super intrigued by people who like get mad, because I'm over here when I fail a lift, I'm like, I'm looking at the video. So that's goes back to the feedback we talked about earlier, right? I'm hoping that I recorded it on video, and I got the fail on video, because even if I don't get it on video, I'm like replaying the lift in my mind and replaying the physics, right? Where where were the force vectors? Were they incorrectly placed? Was the timing incorrect, in terms of trying to move my body and kind of in synchronicity? So I think you can look at things logically, and it's not to say that my way of doing it is the right way, but I do think that one needs to be able to evaluate their response. My particular response is a cerebral response, but other people's is a very emotional, or can be a very emotional response, and they can choose to get mad or angry and kick the barbell or throw a water bottle, but then they need to ask themselves, right? This is what's important, because this is a leveling. This is a feedback. You need to ask yourself, is your response helping you to succeed at that lift in the future, right? And if it's not, if you can say no, then my question to you is, why the hell are you doing it, right? Is throwing
Right.
a water bottle going to help you realize where you went wrong so that you can succeed in that lift when you try it again? If the
Right.
answer is no, why are you doing it? While me over here, I fail a lift, and you'll just, if you were observing and watching me, I'll literally like go into a little, I'll sit down and just go into like a little, I'll just look pensive as hell. Like, I'm over here figuring out a math equation in my head. Like, why did that lift fail? Right. Especially when I know I could have gotten it. Right. Sometimes lifts
Right.
fail just because you're not strong enough. And if you're not strong enough, whatever, go get stronger. But sometimes
Yeah.
lifts fail because of the movement and the skill behind it. So I think ultimately that's what I would say. I would absolutely agree with you. But I think that human beings are fluid. We are dynamic in our very nature. And the most detrimental thing that you can do to yourself is to tell yourself that I am how I am and it is what it is. I can't change it. Yes, you can.
Right.
You have to believe it.
Right. So the idea is, so to put it in Dr. Nick, it's, yes, you're gonna hear out there that, you're gonna take in food different, you're gonna do this different and all that, biology and all, but things can change. And you can be a driving factor in your decisions to changing some of those things. Because your blood might say one thing, that doesn't mean your heart and your blood are gonna stay that way. You can change it over time. You can make it better or you can make it worse. It's only going to go one of those two ways. I like it. I agree with you as well. That that puts me into my last question of the hours, and then we're going to go into some really cool stuff that you have real quick. It's the idea of Dr. Nick giving as much information as you do already. What if you had a banner on every gym in the world? What would Dr. Nick's message be to everybody in every gym in the world?
So I guess a great message, and I would feel like applies to every gym, is that time under tension applies to everything in life, right? So we often use that phrase in the gym, time under tension. Like, let's say, for example, when you're doing tempo squats, right? So 3 seconds down, 2 seconds hold, 1 second up, right? Why are we doing that? Because we're trying to extend the time under tension, because doing so imparts a greater stimulus on our central nervous system, on our musculoskeletal system. So I think kind of what I would, like I said, right, what I would tell everyone is just that time under tension, this principle that we are so comfortable with in the gym, in reality, it applies to everything in life. Whether you're trying to learn Spanish, you're trying to learn a new language, you're trying to learn the violin, you're trying to become more proficient in the stock market and make better trades, the best thing you can do is do instead of thinking, right? And I'm guilty of this myself. I think sometimes people like to ruminate on their thoughts and just think instead of doing. But in reality, you only ever get the experience necessary to tweak and make appropriate changes when you do, instead of just thinking. So
Nice. So it'll be. I like it. I think you should make those banners. Time under tension. And,
yeah,
and then meditate on that. Like, people
so,
have so many ways they can put it into their minds with what you're saying, because it applies to everything. And you talked about another one. Let's go over 4 points that you went over. One of them was time under tension, and that's a great message, because I think that we can elaborate so many more. I think you have an opportunity there to elaborate so much in your social media and to get that word out of the importance of time under tension, because there is a benefit on the other side of that door.
mhm.
You talked about also stimulus and response. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think that one of the biggest advantages that people can give themselves at the gym, and not just at the gym, but outside of the gym, is realizing that there's an intricate relationship between stimulus and response, right? And what I mean by that is at the gym, when you're back squatting, whatever your 75% is, you need to realize that the reason why you're doing that is because you're trying to essentially elicit a response from your body. When we do a metabolic condition, when we do a metcon, we're trying to essentially surpass your stimulus threshold. So essentially what I mean by that is there's a certain amount of work that your body is capable of that will not evoke, will not be a big enough stimulus. For example, let's bring up a good example. So a patient just starts working out and they walk 2 blocks every single day. They walk around their neighborhood every single day, and they keep doing that for 6 months, for a year. There will come a time when they recognize, whether it's from weight loss, whether it's how they feel in terms of their metabolic capacity, there will come a time, if they don't modify that distance and they're always walking 2 blocks, there will come a time when they realize that they're not getting any benefit from it anymore. And that's because they're not surpassing their stimulus threshold. So that's a very important term, because not just at the gym, but wherever in life, we're talking about, you need to realize that you have a stimulus threshold. You have a certain amount of stress that your body laughs at, and your body's like, okay, this is not difficult. And then anything slightly beyond that, but not high enough that you break down, is where the gold is at, because your body then will change appropriately over time, such that that stress now becomes very normal to you. So, essentially realize the relationship between stimulus and response. And then given that relationship, I think it's very interesting. We'll talk about this in the context of CrossFit, right? But over the last 10 or 11 years of CrossFit, I've noticed, and I don't need to say any names because I've come across a lot of you over the last 10 or 11 years, but there are people who cheat in the gym. There are people who put down metabolic conditioning times that they did not complete, who put down scores that they did not complete, who put down weights that they did not lift, right? And those people, they do not understand what I just said, right? That essentially, if they're missing out on the stimulus and they didn't really get that 367 reps that they said that they got, then their body is not going to change. So essentially, given that their body is not going to change, they quite literally wasted that last hour in the gym, right?
Yeah, and there's no response.
There's no response, exactly. And not just is there no response, but think about it, Lalo. We could. There are a lot of things that we can lose in this life and somehow get it back. The one thing you can never get back is time. So basically, you wasted the last hour in the gym, and you will not get any response out of that. You will get no changes, no positive changes out of that. Like you just wasted your time. So yeah,
I get it, and it's super important. Now you also have, I don't have a lot of ways to be able to expand more, but I think that over time we got to do more of these talks, because it's so important. And you should put this into your social media, because I want to make sure that I share it and I let people know more about it. You also have limiting beliefs and quality data, quality feedback. What real quick, because we don't have much time, but what do you think of that part of human beings' behavior, trying to work out and get better, limiting beliefs and quality data?
Sure. So I think limiting beliefs is something we all suffer from to a certain extent, right? We all sometimes, with different things, believe that we're not necessarily capable of doing something. And, one thing that CrossFit has taught me over the last 11 years, whenever I look at a weight, I'm about to walk up to a barbell and attempt a personal record. And, I remember initially when I started CrossFit, I had a lot of negative thoughts before I would try a lift, a lot of limiting beliefs. And then essentially what's happened over the years is that despite these limiting beliefs, I have tried the weight, I have tried the PR weight, the personal record weight, and then succeeded. And when you do that enough times, right, you essentially do something, succeed at doing something that you didn't think that you'd be capable of doing. When you do that enough times, you realize that any amount of negative thought in your mind is detrimental. Not only is it not true, a good amount of the time, but it's also detrimental. You want to definitely be steering your mind in the right way in terms of positive thoughts and positive beliefs. And even before you approach a barbell, you need to know it's going to move. You're going to make it happen.
Yeah, imagery.
Right. There can be
Right.
no shred of doubt in your mind. So, you know, with that said, I'm a very big proponent now of kind of ignoring limiting beliefs. And instead of having those limiting beliefs, you need to put yourself in the mindset of just testing, being a nerd, right? Even in the gym, right? I'm all about data. Like being a nerd, you instead of having these limiting
That's
beliefs,
where it is.
test. Just test, right? Know that hey, you may be able to do it, you may not, but you're not going to know until you test, until you physically try and either fail or succeed. And then the last thing you mentioned is also goes into the limiting beliefs and testing capacity instead, and that's quality feedback. You know, Elon Musk. I remember I saw watch an interview where he talked about, you know, somebody asked him if you could advise kind of so many people on one thing to push themselves forward, what would that be? And he talked about feedback, right? That there whatever it is in life, you need to set up a good feedback mechanism so that when you move in a certain direction, you essentially have, whether it's data or friends and family or whatever, but you know, hopefully it is as objective as possible, that you need to have something set up that is telling you, okay, this is good. There are positive changes coming from the decision that you made. So you should continue down this path, right? So
or not,
you know,
or don't continue down that path.
Exactly. So because of that, quality feedback is very important, right? Obviously, you know, at CrossFit we use a lot of it from the weight on the bar as feedback, and hopefully over the year you're getting stronger and stronger to your metabolic conditioning times. But I think you should also use your coaches as feedback, right? Your coaches can tell you, are you moving better, right? You should use your body as feedback, right? How are you feeling after a metabolic conditioning session? Are you on the ground, passed out, you know, barely able to move and feeling crippled? Or are you like Rich Cronin or Josh Bridges and you're able to finish a workout and walk around, right? That is feedback. There are many different ways to assess yourself and determine are the choices that you're making inducing positive changes or inducing negative changes, and then kind of modifying things appropriately.
I like it. That one relates to all of them. It relates to the stimulus and the response. It relates to everything. I mean, you take blood work, you can take so many different types of data that is amazing. With top athletes, we would do like a lactate threshold, how much lactate, hydrogen, when, how often do you recover? I remember talking with Chris Hinshaw, is the essentially aerobic capacity coach for the top level athletes, Fraser and all them. And I went to one of his conferences here in Florida, and talking with him, just the way that he puts together data with peripheral heart action systems, with lactate thresholds, with what's his lactate, his aerobic tempo, like how fast can he keep the revolutions per minute going, running. Well, now I have to take that data, put them on a bike in a different way. So in a way, it's really cool, man. I really thank you, Doc, because you've been putting into perspective a lot of things for me and being an example for so many people in your social media and more. So I thank you for your time. I think it's been amazing. I'm going to write up about this and I'm going to post this up so that everybody can learn more from you and contact you and see you. I don't know if you're taking messages now, but maybe they can email you and go ahead and find you. So what's the Instagram handle that they can go to, just in case, if they're listening?
So on Instagram, it's all just one word, the fittest doc, DOC. Then you can send me a direct message on there, but to be completely honest, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but I've had some messages about people telling me that I take too long to respond. But you have to keep in mind, in as much as I have an Instagram, that's not my job, right? I have to prioritize my patients. I have to on a day-to-day basis, and most of my time I want to dedicate to my patients and taking care of them.
Got it.
You send me a message if you'd like. Please be patient. It may take me a while to respond. My Steady MD website that you can use to check me out is just www.steadymd.com/Dr. Nick. So yeah.
And it's on your bio. It's in your bio, right?
It's in my bio on Instagram. Absolutely. Yep.
All right, perfect. Well, Dr. Nick, thank you very much for being with us. I appreciate your time. This has been amazing. And I'm hoping that we can have another one of these conversations about nutrition
Absolutely.
and about fitness, more concentrated. Thank you very much, Doc. I appreciate your time. All right. You have a great afternoon.
You too, Lilo. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Take care, Doc.
Bye-bye.